There was a time when Pontiac didn't build cars. It built legends. Not safe, not quiet, not polite. Pontiac was the division of GM that didn't follow the rules. If Chevrolet was the golden child, Pontiac was the problem child, and proud of it. Every time someone told them you can't do that, they did it anyway. Louder, faster, and with a bigger cam. What rolled off Pontiac's line wasn't just transportation, it was rebellion in sheet metal, rubber, and V8 thunder. Let's start with the machine that ignited the whole muscle car wildfire, the 1964 Pontiac GTO Tri-Power. This wasn't born in a boardroom, it was born from engineers sneaking around GM's own rulebook. They took a mid-sized Tempest, stuffed in a 389 cubic inch V8, and topped it with 3 two-barrel carbs. The now iconic Tri-Power setup. It was rated at 348 horsepower, but on the street, that number didn't mean much. The GTO launched like a rocket, and when that third carb opened up, it felt like an afterburner. It wasn't just powerful, it was illegal fun. Pontiac changed the game with that move, and every other brand spent the next decade trying to catch up. Then came the 1970 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4, the most unhinged Judge they ever built. If the base Judge was already wild, the Ram Air 4 took it to the edge. Under the hood sat a high compression 400 cubic inch V8 with radical tuning, high flow round port heads, a Lopi camshaft, and an 800 CFM Rochester 4 barrel, officially rated at 370 horsepower. Unofficially, it was well north of 430, but the real story wasn't the number. It was how it delivered it. The Ram Air 4 needed to scream to make power. It didn't come alive until you wound it out past 5,000. And when you did, it was violent, raw, and barely street legal. Fewer than 800 judges got the Ram Air 4 treatment. Today, finding one is like spotting a unicorn with a license plate. But if you want to talk about Pontiac flexing hard in a totally unexpected way, then you need to hear about the 1973 Pontiac Grand Am 455 Super Duty prototype. Yeah, Grand Am, not GTO, not Trans Am. Pontiac wanted to see what would happen if they stuffed their most powerful engine into a personal luxury car. The result? A plush street machine with the heart of a drag racer. Only a couple were built for internal testing, and none ever saw public release. But inside that sleek body was the legendary 455 Super Duty, built tough with reinforced internals and rated at 310 net horsepower. Imagine pulling up to the red light in your vinyl-roofed cruiser and blowing the doors off everything in sight. This was Pontiac experimenting and nearly creating one of the coolest sleepers of the decade. Of course, the 1973 Pontiac Trans Am 455 Super Duty did make it to production, just barely. It was the end of the muscle car era, and most manufacturers were backing down. Not Pontiac. They doubled down. The SD455 was hand-assembled with a nod to race tech. Forged pistons, a strengthened block, nitrited crank. This thing wasn't just built for the strip, it was built to survive. Only 252 were made with a 4-speed manual, and each one was a ticking time bomb of torque. The rating? 310 horsepower, but in truth, it was making 370 plus easily. And the sound? A mechanical roar that shook parking lots. It was one of the last true muscle cars before emissions strangled the segment. Pontiac went out swinging, and the SD455 was the knockout punch. Now skip forward a few decades to something modern, misunderstood, and just as wild, the 2006 Pontiac GTO 6.0 LS2. It may not look like a classic muscle car, but it absolutely earns its place here. Underneath the understated body was GM's LS2 V8, a 6.0 liter mill making 400 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. It was a straight-up missile in disguise. 6-speed manual, rear-wheel drive, and a soundtrack that would make a Corvette blush. People didn't get it back then. They complained it didn't look aggressive enough, but the real ones knew this GTO wasn't about flash. It was about making power the new school way. It didn't shout, it sucker punched. And now, these things are climbing in value fast. Let's take it back to when power meant torque so thick it twisted frames. The 1971 Pontiac GTO 455 HO was the brand's answer to shrinking performance numbers at the dawn of the emissions era. They weren't backing down. The high-output 455 made 335 horsepower and a staggering 480 pound-feet of torque. That wasn't just fast, that was violent. It launched like a freight train and made no apologies. Equipped with functional ram air scoops, forged internals, and a deeply angry exhaust note, the 455 HO GTO was a rolling thunderstorm. Even as the industry softened, Pontiac still found a way to scare the hell out of everyone. And when you hit the gas in one of these, it didn't just accelerate, it assaulted the road. Now let's get into something truly special. The 1969 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Ram Air 4. This car is holy grail territory. Only 55 were ever built with the Ram Air 4 engine. That alone makes it one of the rarest Firebirds ever, but the magic wasn't just in the numbers, it was in the build. A 400 cubic inch V8, high compression heads, solid lifters, and a cam so aggressive it barely idled. Officially 345 horsepower, realistically pushing 425. This wasn't a car for casual Sunday drivers, it was twitchy, loud, and borderline feral. But if you could tame it, you had one of the most potent Pontiac packages ever sold. And in a lightweight Firebird chassis, it was an animal. If Pontiac was known for anything, it was turning everyman cars into street terrors. And nowhere was that more evident than in the 1963 Pontiac Catalina Super Duty 421. Before muscle cars even had a name, Pontiac was already building factory drag weapons. The Super Duty 421 wasn't some option package, it was a declaration of war. Aluminum front end, heat-treated internals, dual 4 barrels, and an absurd 13:1 compression ratio. This thing was cranking out over 405 horsepower on paper, but real numbers were closer to 500. You couldn't walk into a dealership and buy one easily. You needed connections, cash, and the nerve to tame it. These cars were banned from NHRA almost as quickly as they arrived because they were just too damn fast. Pontiac proved then that it didn't just play the game, it rigged it. Fast forward a decade and Pontiac was still throwing haymakers, like the 1970 Pontiac Trans Am Ram Air 4. This was the first year the second-gen body style dropped, with its swooping lines and wide stance. But under the skin, it was still all muscle. The Ram Air 400 cubic inch engine, with its wild cam and round port heads, was built for high RPM violence. Just 88 4-speed Trans Ams were fitted with the RAI 4 that year, making it one of the rarest and most potent birds ever released. Rated at 370 horsepower, but just like its GTO counterpart, that number was more of a formality. You had to work for the power. It didn't hit until you buried the pedal and let that tack swing north of 5,000. But when it did, it was pure Pontiac rage. Now let's talk brute force. The 1970 Pontiac GTO 455 HO. Everyone talks about the Ram Air engines, but the 455 high output delivered torque that felt like a building collapse. With 500 pound-feet on tap and 360 horsepower, it didn't scream, it slammed. The engine was paired with a functional Ram Air system, a performance-tuned exhaust, and high-flow heads. It wasn't made to win beauty contests. It was made to destroy quarter miles and snap necks at green lights. And unlike some of the higher winding setups, the 455 HO had power everywhere. Step on it at idle or from a roll, and it moved like a charging bull. It was the last great gas before insurance premiums and emissions neutered the breed. But Pontiac wasn't just about cubes and carbs. The 1989 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am 20th Anniversary Turbo proved they could play the tech game too. This wasn't your average 3rd Gen F body. It was powered by the same turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 found in the Buick GNX, and it was just as nasty. Rated at 250 horsepower, but real-world dyno tests showed more like 300 plus. This thing ran 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds and dusted Corvettes of the same year. Only 1,555 were made, each with special badging, white paint, and a sleeper attitude. It was high-tech for its time, turbo boost, intercooler, sequential fuel injection, and it delivered all the muscle with none of the bulk. This was Pontiac's way of saying, we can still take the crown, and we'll do it with a V6. Back to the classics. The 1967 Pontiac GTO Ram Air 1. Before there was a Ram Air 2, 3, or 4, there was the one that started it all. This was Pontiac's first production attempt at forcing cold air directly into the engine, and it worked. A 400 cubic inch V8, high flow heads, hotter camshaft, and a factory rated 360 horsepower made it one of the most potent GTOs of the era. The scoop on the hood wasn't just for show, it was functional and driver controlled. You'd reach under the dash, pull the cable, and suddenly your engine was gulping fresh air from the high high-pressure zone above the hood line. It was simple, brutal, and it worked. Only 751 were built with the Ram air setup that year, making it both a pioneer and a powerhouse. Then came a dark horse, the 2009 Pontiac G8 GXP. This was Pontiac's last stand. The brand was on its way out, but they didn't go quietly. The G8 GXP was powered by a 6.2-liter LS3 V8, the same engine found in the Corvette, making 415 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. Rear-wheel drive, optional 6-speed manual, 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. And it looked like a business sedan, which made it even better. It was the fastest, most powerful production Pontiac ever sold. And the saddest part, it was also one of the last. Just over 1,800 were made. Had Pontiac stuck around, this would have been their new muscle platform. The perfect mix of raw power and modern drivability. Instead, it became a legend the moment it left the line. We close this stretch with a car that doesn't get nearly enough respect, the 1977 Pontiac Can-Am. Only around 1,100 units were built before a mold broke at the plant, and Pontiac decided not to fix it. What was lost was one of the most badass street sleepers of the decade. It was built off the Le Mans platform, powered by a 200-plus horsepower 400 or 455 V8, depending on production run, and featured a unique shaker hood scoop rear deck spoiler and blackout trim. It looked like a Le Mans with something to prove. And it delivered. The Can-Am was fast, loud, and exclusive. A last gasp of performance in the late 70s when everything else was choking under smog gear. Today, they're nearly impossible to find, but when you do, you've got something that makes Pontiac fans stop in their tracks. Some Pontiacs got all the spotlight, these ones didn't, but that didn't make them any less powerful. We're down to the last 6, and they're some of the rarest, fastest, and most underrated machines the brand ever built. No gimmicks, just big numbers, low production, and a whole lot of muscle. Let's get right into it, starting with the 1969 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Ram Air 4. Only 55 were ever made with the Ram Air 4 and a 4-speed manual. That alone makes it a unicorn, but under the hood, a 400 cubic inch V8 rated at 370 horsepower, though in reality it was pushing over 430. This engine had round port heads, an aluminum intake, high compression pistons, and a cam so aggressive it barely idled. It was designed for the strip, not the showroom. This wasn't your average Firebird, it was a factory street fighter built for people who actually knew how to drive one. Next up, the 1972 Pontiac Le Mans GT 455 HO. Everyone remembers the GTO, but this Le Mans was built with the same bones and less noise. The 455 high output was the same engine from the GTO, but it came wrapped in a cleaner, subtler body. No scoops, no stripes, just torque. Rated at 300 net horsepower with 8.4 to 1 compression, but what mattered was the 480 pound-feet of torque. The Ram air setup was functional, the exhaust was dual, and if you picked the 4-speed, it pulled hard through every gear. Not many buyers check the GT box, so today they're tough to find. But the ones that exist, quiet killers. Now let's rewind to 1966 to a car nobody talks about, the Pontiac 2+2 with the 421 HO. Think of it as a Catalina with a bad attitude. This was Pontiac's full-size muscle machine before that was even a thing. The 421 HO engine gave you 376 horsepower and triple deuces or a 4-barrel carb setup. Heavy-duty suspension, dual exhaust, and over 450 pound-feet of torque meant this thing could actually move for its size. Quarter mile, mid to low 14s if you knew how to launch it. Only around 6,300 were made in total, and very few came with the HO engine and manual combo. Big car, big engine, big respect. Now something a little newer, the 1977 Pontiac Firebird Formula W 72. While everyone was distracted by the Trans Am and its screaming chicken, the Formula flew under the radar. It came with the W72 package, which gave it a performance-tuned 400 cubic inch V8. On paper, it made 200 horsepower. In real life, it was one of the quickest cars of the year. The heads were improved, the camshaft was more aggressive, the mounts were stiffer, and if you paired it with the 4-speed manual, it moved. Not flashy, not loud, but fast. And faster than people expected in the late 70s. It was one of the last real Pontiac muscle cars before the full weight of emissions and downsizing hit. Let's go all the way back now to the 1960 Pontiac Ventura with the 389 Tri-Power. This car predated the GTO, but the formula was already there. A smaller coupe, big power, and no nonsense. The Tri-Power setup meant 3 two-barrel carbs feeding a 389 V8, making about 348 horsepower. But more than the number, it was the way it delivered it. Sharp throttle, strong torque, and paired with lightweight construction, these things could outrun Corvettes if tuned right. No decals, no wild styling, just clean lines and serious pull, and good luck finding one today. Production numbers were limited, and most people didn't realize what they were buying at the time. Last up, the final GTO, the 2006 Pontiac GTO LS2. Some people dismissed it because it was built in Australia, but if you actually drove one, you knew the truth. It had a 6.0-liter LS2 V8 under the hood, putting out 400 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. Rear-wheel drive, Tremec 6-speed manual, independent rear suspension. It could do 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds, and the quarter mile in just over 13. It didn't need retro looks or fake scoops. It just needed the right driver. At the time, it was faster than the Mustang GT and cheaper than a Corvette. And now, it's finally getting the respect it should have had all along. There you have it. 20 of the most powerful machines Pontiac ever let loose on the streets. Some were loud, some were quiet killers, but every single one had muscle in its DNA and purpose in its build. Pontiac didn't just chase horsepower. They defined it. From overlooked legends to brutal street brawlers, these weren't just cars, they were statements. And even now, long after the brand disappeared, the power still echoes. Because real muscle doesn't fade, it roars forever.